Hello and welcome to the Survivor's Guide to Life on KPCA Petaluma 103.3 FM. I'm Jenny Stevenson, your host, and joining me is Dr. Peter Bernstein. Today we are continuing in our series on how to survive through adversity. Dr. Bernstein, or Peter, as he likes to be called, is a coach and mentor with 49 years of experience helping people survive and grow through trauma, struggles, and hard times, the stuff of real life. The goal of our series is to help you discover what we've experienced, that adversity is more than a trial to endure. It can be an exciting opportunity to learn, grow, and thrive.
Right.
And again, we sort of say that and we go, yeah, simple maybe, but not easy.
Excuse me today. I have a bit of a cold. We've had a lot of rain and cold, and we've seen a lot of sick people actually and helped them, and I think I caught some. It's not a flu. I don't feel terrible, but definitely may hear it in this show.
You may hear it.
Yeah, and I know that Steve, our producer's fighting one. Jenny's got a little one.
We got our water already
yeah,
here.
we're set in our little things that we suck on that keep us going. Yeah. But one thing is I want to say hello to all my friends back east in New Jersey and Florida that I grew up with, and they've been wonderful. I love them, and considering the way we grew up and the way we've turned out, they've turned out to be some very compassionate and caring and empathetic people, and I appreciate them really a lot. In fact, a couple of them are coming out from New Jersey to see my wife and myself the 19th.
Next week.
Wonderful. Yeah, they're great people. There's a lot of them. Anyway, this is an interesting show. We talked about what this format is like. We did the previous episode show, and this one, and maybe one more.
Yes.
And I think it's a really good one.
Can I just kind of set that up
for
people? Would that be all right if I step in for just a moment?
I think so.
So our last episode, I think it was number 55, was the start of what we're thinking is going to be maybe about a 3-part series on hope. And we're talking about practical hope, not pie-in-the-sky hope, but practical hope from a personal perspective, and the personal perspective is coming from Peter. These episodes are a little different in that I am going to be more interviewing Peter. Instead of being so much of a co-host, he's going to be slightly more of a guest, a very special guest. Our last time, about the topic of hope, understanding hope, practical hope, we got into some material around what gets in the way, what makes it hard for us during adversity, hard times, to hang on to hope. We talked about that, and that was, if I were going to pick a theme out of what we talked about, and we talked about quite a bit, that was maybe more the emphasis last time. Today, what we would like to get a little more into is, what is practical hope like? What does it do for us? Why is it essential? What does it enable us to do? And again, what we're talking about here is not easy to do, but it is essential.
It's essential, right?
And we're going to be drawing on personal experience, real life personal experience,
right,
as we talk about this today.
Right. Well, we're talking about just one thing that you had mentioned, that I've been involved in the psychology of trauma recovery for 49, almost 50 years. But actually, my experiences in Arsenal go back a lot further than that. And that, too, has been very much a part of my life and my work for a long time. And I've drawn upon a lot of those earlier experiences as well. And I find that all of it has made me stronger. And it's interesting. It's like a preparation for what comes next. And the things that come next seem to be harder. And as we go through it, what I find is that I've never been a person to run away. I've always been a person that has moved toward or embraced struggles and adversity, particularly when it had to do with caring for other people in various modes of life. And I've been Before I was a psychologist and psychotherapist, where now I'm a mentor and consultant and a life coach and for trauma recovery. I was also in a different world in New Jersey. I was a builder in the construction world, and that's a different world. But I gained a lot of experience that I carried forward, and those were hard times too, very difficult and frightening. But at the same time, I survived them, and I came out wounded, definitely, a good case of PTS from some of it. But one of the things that I did get out of it as I healed was a new sense of confidence and strength. And I don't always have to, it's manifested itself when I was younger in pride and young, big shot. But now that I'm older, I look back on it, and what it really is it's something that has helped me in the midst of tremendous difficulties, and I've been through many, mine and other folks, to know that I can get through it, and that out of it better things will come, even when I can't see what they're going to be when I'm in the midst of it. So, I just like to preface all of this today is, yes, we have the framework for hope and how important it is, but also we have an understanding of what it's like, and I can speak from experience now, probably more than ever in my life, that it's not separated from going through difficulties. It's not avoiding them or being untouched. It's the opposite. So when we're in the midst of it, what's an amazing thing is we're still going to go through everything everybody else does emotionally. The discouragement, the despairs, the fears, all of that. But the key for me has always been to remember that's an emotionality that goes with it, and it's normal. And because of the work I've done and do, I do know how to deal with it. I know how to get through it, as painful as it is, and I have plenty of that in my life these days. But deep within myself, a lot of my hope is based on what I've been through and gone through and got through in the past. And I know that I'll get through this. And I know that the people we're helping will get through what they're going through, even though the hardships and the adversity and struggle is very much a part of their life. I consider it to be a condition of life. And a lot of people don't want to admit that or even relate to it, but it is. It's a condition of life. It's not something that's extraordinary. It's something that's real. So once you accept that, it's, in more generic terms, it's a bummer. It really is. In my early days of speaking like that, it is. And it's tough. And it hurts. And I hurt. And people that we help hurt. But yet at the same time, I know that they're going to get through it, and I know I'm going to get through it. In fact, there's going to be some kind of purpose and meaning that's going to shape me into what I'm, to be a better person and to prepare me for the next part of my life. So I look at it as more like as part of a tapestry of life, not as just one unique stage of life, and that's it. But when we're going through it, I also know that I give it my best, and if it's caring for loved ones, if it's caring for those in need, it's whatever the demands are at the time, I give it 100%. And that's a hard way to go, I'll admit it. But I know that eventually I'll come out of it for the better. And it will make me a better man, a better person. When I'm in the midst of it, I can't really say I feel great. In fact, sometimes I feel like it's living hell. And it is. But I also know that I'll get through it. And that there will be a new day. And I always know that, and it's always true. So I live by that. And there's been a book written called The Type R Personality, and it's called Transformative Resilience. And I'll tell you something. It was written by Alma and Stephanie Marston. It confirms to me, and it's written in a nice way, in a good way, of things that I've been living and doing and working with for a long time, way before this book came about. Although I think it's a very good book, and it's a good reminder. But I appreciate what they're talking about. And they've been through hard times too. Anyway, and I think, is it Stephanie, the younger one, or Alma? but she went through some devastating accidents. She wasn't supposed to ever walk again, and I don't remember all the details. But through that time of feeling powerless and feeling, that she couldn't do anything. She had to accept what was going on. She had to rehabilitate with no guarantee that she was ever going to walk again. But through that time, she talks about seeing her vulnerability as a human being, recognizing the fragility of life and how precious it is. And she developed a new appreciation for life out of it. She did come out of it. She is walking, I expect. But what I think is she's a lot better person for it. But she had to come to that place of being absolutely stripped to her core self, seeing the good and the bad, see the direction in life that was not going well. Maybe by the world's standards it was, but not by her personal standards. So I know she came out of this speaking about a greater appreciation for life, a deeper compassion for her fellow man, and a new sense of purpose in her life. To me, those things are core and essential to having, being able to make a good life through adversity and difficulty. So I think the book is really good. I think what we do is really important and really good. That's why we're doing these shows. But I like it in another way too. And that it's so much, in some ways, I don't mean to sound strange, but I am so grateful in some ways for what we're going through and what I'm going through. Because when I speak to someone, and when I speak about, I get it and I understand. I mean it, because I'm there too. And it's so, to me, it's a gift to feel like a fellow human being again. Not a psychologist, not someone with a lot of education only, but a fellow human being on his own journey and on a journey to reach his own humanity and to give and help others and to come alongside them. And when I say I understand, I mean it. And they usually know this is not just talk. So to me, that's a gift. It comes hard, but I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't have it any other way. It's like finding gold.
You've been listening to The Survivor's Guide to Life on KPCA Petaluma 103.3 FM. We'll be back after a short break. Welcome back to The Survivor's Guide to Life. I'm your host, Jenny Stevenson. In our first segment today, Peter opened our time today talking about hope, practical hope, and its essential nature for going through hard times. Peter was giving us a really good overview and talking about the life experiences that he has gone through, not just professionally but personally, that as he approached them with the intent, the knowledge that he could get through them, that better things were coming, enabled him to build, as he went through his life, more confidence, more strength, more resilience, to become, he said, a better man, to become more compassionate, to have a deeper sense of purpose in his life, to be a fellow human, to be able to come beside other people who are having hard times.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you something as a follow-up to that, and that is that you talked about through your life coming from a place of, I can get through this, better things will come, things are very hard, but I'm going to keep going. And I know that that's not a universal experience for people. Not everyone feels that way. I'm wondering if you learned that from someone, or whether, how did you, I know that you said, and it was clear that that built for you, the more you went through hard times, you built more and more on your ability to have trust that you could get through it and that better things would come. But in the beginning, do you remember how you started that way? Was it someone who set an example? Was it just always in you?
It must have been in me, but I didn't know it, because I had challenges that drove me so far the other way. into discouragement and despair and self-loathing, if we're talking about really early. But I also came to a point that I had some kind of inner strength that came to, I guess it was a desperation, that I had to make new decisions about myself and my life and how I wanted to live it. It was like I had to reframe my life. I had to reframe the difficulties and the struggles and the challenges, instead of letting them defeat me, although they were very painful, and many of them. It was a refusal to let them defeat me. It was a refusal to be destroyed by them. And
Can I ask one quick question? Had you experienced, it sounds like you had experienced what it felt like to be defeated.
absolutely, and to be victimized. It's interesting today, if I have an aggressive side, and I do, it comes to the forefront when I see other people that are victimized or bullied are treated during their very vulnerable, broken times with exploitive kinds of approaches. I've seen corporations do it. I've seen certain medical companies do it. I've seen a lot of things. I've seen elderly treated that way, children. It's just something I have in me, but it really goes far back to when I remember what it was like to not have anybody there to protect me or to advocate for me. And I've done it actually professionally as an advocate in hospitals for folks that were really terrified and had to deal with actually not only their sickness but also the system and how they were getting pushed around. I remember so many different times I was called in to advocate for them. And they didn't have the strength at that point or the confidence. I remember they were frightened because they felt that if they really stood up for themselves, that they wouldn't receive the help that they needed. They would be treated poorly or neglected or whatever. And even if they fabricated that, that's what they felt. And then I'd be called in to help them and to advocate. I can't really say I've ever. No, I can't say that's not true. I have seen where there was neglect and kind of I wouldn't call it revenge, but get backs by certain staff at times. I have seen that, but I've seen a lot of times where it wasn't like that, but there was a certain coldness. There was a harshness when people needed compassion and empathy and understanding and support, and they weren't getting it, and they didn't have a family to do that either. That I was called in. And those folks, yes, I can advocate for them. And I have that capability to this day. I do it for my own, our own staff. I do it for my wife, and that I do step in, and for others. You know, when I've seen folks that work with us at hospice not treated well, not by hospice, but out. I don't put up with that. They're too good. They do so much good, and they care, and they're giving, and they're angels. And if I see them treated badly, that doesn't go well. And I do not just feel protective, I will advocate for them, even in my own broken state. So I have the ability to be very vulnerable and broken, but also, if need be, to advocate and stand up for what needs to be taken care of and protected. I have those abilities. Not everybody has that. I do.
And that came out of a time in your life when you said that you felt desperation and that you were being victimized yourself, possibly, and you needed to reframe and refused to be defeated. And that at that point you started building on the attitude of, I can get through this and better things will come.
They over time they did come. That's what I came to realize. There'll be another day, and as long as I stay on the path of growth and making the best and reframing very stressful or difficult situations in a new way.
Can you give an example of that? Is there something that comes to mind about how you it'd be easy to see something that happened is in the negative way, that you instead turn it around to be something that can bring something good to you?
Well, there's a lot. There's been a lot. Um, there's been many things. The outstanding, I guess the outstanding things, not that I want to go back to my childhood, but there have been people, all of my mentors have passed away, people that I looked up to, and people that meant a lot to me. And I know when they passed, a lot of other folks just fell apart and felt that they couldn't go on, or um, they just let the distress destroy them. I didn't do that. Although I felt the loss deeply, I was able to get on my feet and continue on my own journey. I carry them in my heart, these folks, but not where I let the grief or the loss turn me away from the path that I've been on. And these folks that passed away helped me stay on that path at times. They were terrific. So when I lost them, I could have gone sideways myself. But because of past experiences earlier than that, I didn't let that happen. But I do feel, it's not like I'm in denial and pretending. I feel the losses and I feel the pain and the grief plenty. It's so I can feel and at the same time continue to move forward. And that's the hope that I have. It gives me this, it gives me an energy to 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 go forward in spite of my losses and pain. So I'm facing probably some of the biggest loss right now. I'm facing that, and my heart breaks because it's for my wife.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at her and I adore her, and I will do anything for her, and I do. Um, and at the same time, as deeply as I feel grieved at what she's going through, and I would do anything to alleviate her grief, her what she's going through. There's also a part of me that realizes there's nothing I can do, and I have to accept what she's going through, comfort her, nourish her, love her, surround her with the best people, and give her everything that she needs to continue on her journey. I also know that life isn't going to end when Lynn goes on to a better place. Um, Even though I still feel tremendous grief and loss, even though she's still here, it's called ambiguous grief. It's for real. I do, and I'm a pretty intense guy, so you can imagine what I emotionally feel. But as much as I go through, as much as I know how to deal with it, there's a part of me that knows there's going to be a better day, that this isn't going to last. It may feel, here's one of the things I'll tell you that I've discovered lately that really means a lot to me. Even though I'm going through horrendously painful times, taking care of my wife, and also I have my own, I have injuries from sports horse events.
You're in pain.
I have pain.
Personal physical pain
yes,
right now.
I do, and it hurts too.
Yeah.
But I live with that. I'm used to it. I've been in sporting events most of my life, and I'm okay. That doesn't mean I don't feel it. I do. But one of the things that I see that is going to come out of this is a much deeper empathetic compassion for other people that are going through this. And to me, that's a gift. It's a true gift that I can come alongside other people with a true understanding of the difficulties and the hellishness and the despair and of what they're having, and give them hope by example. Not by just what I say, although that helps, but by who I am. And I can say, I've been there too, and I know what you're going through, and mean it. And they'll know I mean it because they'll feel it. And at the same time, I don't have to be completely crushed and ineffectual, but instead be useful. And I think that's one of my greatest purposes in life. And I guess at times in my life I've had enemies, not by anything that I've asked for, but they come. And when they think they're defeating me, and sometimes it sure looks that way, well, the truth of the matter is they're sorely misguided, because every time I see that and I feel the emotion of it, I also feel that I know good will come out of it, and it happens every time. So even those folks that have been just scoundrels of deceit and have meant to hurt me, well, didn't mean they don't hurt me, but they sure don't destroy me. In fact, so much good usually comes out of it. So I know that deeper down. That's part of my hope.
I had a follow-up question, but I see that we're close to a break, and I don't want to get started on that. So how about if we go to our break and we'll come back with the question.
Okay.
You've been listening to The Survivor's Guide to Life on KPCA Petaluma 103.3 FM. We'll be back after a short break. Welcome back to The Survivor's Guide to Life. I'm your host, Jenny Stevenson. In our last segment, Peter was talking about, I'd asked him a question about following up on how did he come to have such a hold on believing, knowing that he could get through difficult times and that better things were to come. And Peter mentioned life experiences in which he was defeated, but then got to a desperate point where he wanted to, he was refusing to stay there. He was not going to be defeated. He was going to reframe what was happening to him and find ways to come through it and move forward. And Peter, you mentioned a couple of things as you were talking about that and about the value that this has had in your life to be more empathetic. You mentioned that for Lynn, you mentioned that the experiences you've gone through have helped you not only to go through this, but to be able to be there to give her what she needs now. And just before our break, you mentioned that these experiences have also helped you to be useful and not ineffectual. And so my question is, it sounds like this is related to hope, that the ability to find things to do, find what's important, learn, do research, grow, find answers, go out and do what can be done.
Yes.
Rather than flail around kind of not knowing what to do with yourself.
Right,
Those are all part of the lesson that comes from this as well.
Seems to be. Doesn't mean that we don't come up against unknowns all the time. Because in the battle of sickness, dying, and death, boy, do the changes come too. And unless it's just shock trauma where it's really quick, it's what worked one day may not work the next. But I do find that I can think on my feet, and I have a confidence about that. That in fact, I can use this sense of, well, being ineffective, or not having the answers, or struggling, knowing that even within that, there'll be an answer, and there'll be a way for me to find the energy to move forward and to use my energy in new ways to help. So it kind of helps me reorganize my thinking. I wouldn't say I'm a control freak, and I use that word generically, but I don't think it's that. It's different. It's almost like I evaluate the situations after I've felt all of these things and gone through them, and realize there's going to be answers that come out of this that's going to help me for the next challenge, whatever it may be. And that, in fact, based on what I've learned from what other people might consider a failure or a defeat, I don't look at it that way for too long, because I look at it, that's where I'm going to gather information, where I'm going to learn something new. It's going to teach me something new for whatever the next steps are. So I need it, and I want it. Not that I like it. I'm not saying I like adversity. I'm not saying that I really enjoy pain. That is just not true. But I know it's part of life, and I'll use it. And when it comes, I know it's not going to defeat me, but I'm going to feel everything that everybody else feels. I'm not immune.
I hear you saying that another attitude that's essential, aside from hope, is a willingness to learn.
Absolutely. I think hope gives us the energy. And also it's almost like taking something that looks like a defeat or failure and reframing it, or a distress, and the distresses can be very intense. And it's reframing it in a more positive, constructive way. As I move and as we help other people move through their emotions, there's going to be something that we're going to be able to reap out of that that's going to help us. And then I teach people how to do that. But I couldn't, excuse me, I couldn't do that if I hadn't been through it myself. There's no psychology book in the world that's going to teach you that. And I've studied plenty of psychology and plenty of theories. And frankly, yeah, they're in me, but I don't think as a theorist. I think as a person who's practical and real and genuine and down to earth, and that's the way I want to keep it. I don't want anything that keeps me too disconnected from my fellow man and their suffering and pain and adversity. I want to feel connected. I find that my training, my skills, my education, actually without even being aware of it, disconnected me from my fellow man, became a barrier. And even if I thought I wasn't doing it, it was the way people would respond to me as an authority. Obviously, people tell me a very powerful authority, and that I, have a strong presence. But I also know that that's not really where the real power is anyway.
I think this is connected. Let me just ask you. Sometimes when people are going through hard times, some types of people tend to want to withdraw, to isolate. You're talking about how important it is for you not to disconnect, and how you value the connection with other people. It sounds like that's true for you when times are hard, and then after you've gotten through them, to be able to then reach out and connect with others who are going through hard times.
That's true.
What would you say to people who, and I think I may, my tendency for quite a while was, if things were hard, I tended to pull in and isolate. What would you say to someone like that?
Now we're talking, Peter's got to find empathy. And this is one of those, Peter's not so good at this one. I've been like a strong man for a long time. And I just am, wherever there's a crisis, emergency, or whatever, I go to it if that's what's in my face. I don't run away, where I watch a lot of other people avoid that. And if you're asking me, what would I tell those folks? I would tell them to not run and to fortify themselves against the desire to run. I have that desire when I see things too. I just don't do it. And I would say to people, I know what they're feeling, because I feel it too, except I don't act on it and run, or bury my head in the sand, or avoid. If something needs to be taken care of and addressed, I do it. I usually come out of it for the better. There's been certain situations in my life that will always stand out. And I remember one that was a long time ago, but there was a very serious car accident, and I was going on vacation with my family. And I noticed that the traffic had been stalled. It was on 280 in California. And interestingly, a car had flipped over, and a number of the participants, when one of them was thrown out, the others were hanging out of it. And when I finally got up to it, I didn't see one person get out to help. And it was a gruesome picture. The man that was thrown out, people kept driving over him like it was a dead carcass. It was the most appalling situation. And I stopped right away and jumped out, and I took a look at the man. He was dead. And I realized I better get on with those that are still living. And it was a wedding party. And the bride was hanging halfway out, and her dress was covered with blood. And the car was on its side, and I knew it could blow up. And I pulled her out, and there were a number of other people I pulled out. And I looked over, I'll never forget this, to the side of the road next to it, and there were about 5 or 6 other people that were part of the wedding party, and they didn't lift a finger to help. And I know I should have our guest Mimi on because she can educate Peter again. But I remember looking at going, are they kidding me? I got to drag all these other people out of this car. These people were part of the wedding party, and they're not doing anything.
These are their loved ones.
Not a
Yes.
thing. And I know part of me was appalled. They didn't have time to get into it. But I looked at them and I was like, what is wrong with them? Their loved ones are, one has died, others could be blown up any minute in the car, and nobody's lifting a finger. So, and that included the traffic passing by, and no one even got out to help. So, I did that, and I waited for the paramedics eventually came, you know, and once I saw it and got everything laid out for them as best I could, and saw that everything was in good hands, I could then move on. But I wouldn't say that Peter Bernstein is the most empathetic person to people that don't want to help or are petrified that they just will not do anything. Sometimes I remember saying to people, hey, let's get on with it, get over here and give a hand. I did it with those people, and they didn't do a thing. They were terrified.
They may have been frozen.
They were
in shock.
They were shocked.
Yeah.
But in the midst of it, I've been shocked too, many times. And I just will not let the shock stop me, where other people will. I would encourage people that have the tendency to want to just, not just freeze, but to not budge and watch others get sick, get killed, get die, whatever it is, to turn that around. Because the people that are helping, like myself, feel just as frightened and just as overwhelmed as they are, except we engage with it and we do whatever it needs to help these folks that are in need. I would encourage them to realize how important that is, because they're going to have to live with themselves after they've stopped running away. And frankly, I wouldn't want to trade places with anybody like that.
You just said something I want to just point out again. You said that people like you in that accident could be feeling just as scared as the people who were frozen on the sidelines. I mean, the car could have exploded while you were pulling somebody out of it. You could be feeling just as scared, but you were acting on a need that you saw happen.
Yeah.
I don't know that people get that. I think sometimes they look at someone like you who rushes in and can act and thinks, oh, he's not a problem. He just goes in and does it. But it's not always true. Courage means there's fear. And
that's right.
And people can get very myopic and think, oh, everybody else is better than I am, and I'm too scared to do this.
That's okay. That would be a more empathetic understanding. But yeah, that's true. I get it. Like I said, I wasn't always the most courageous person in life.
Yeah.
But at a younger age, I had to come to a place of finding courage. I didn't know that's what it was. But it's that new direction in my life has helped me a lot to get through very difficult situations and to help other people get through difficult situations. I don't expect to run away from what's happening with Lynn. I'm going to be there to her last breath. I promise her that, and I promise myself that. And I grieve and hurt deeply, anytime. Not all the time, but a good part of the time. And yet I know that whatever she needs, I'm going to be there for her the best I can, or I'm going to have people around her that are going to be just as good as I am, if not better and more capable. And as far as I'm concerned, the people, including yourself and others on our staff, are angels. They have capabilities, they have a heart, they're selfless, they know how to be loving. One of the components of love, and it's in the Bible, is to be selfless and unselfish, and I believe that. And I know that Lynn is surrounded by selfless, caring people that are so good and also so darn effective in what needs to be done. And sometimes, many times, better than I am at it. I'll tell you that. And, I want to help in a lot. The answer many times is, we got it, Peter. And I hear that one too much.
It isn't always because we think we're more effective. It's because the intensity experience for you. is at a different level.
I know.
Than for us.
And I love it. I appreciate, let's face it, our institute, Lynn, everything we do people are just incredible caregivers of all kinds. First responders I love them. I love what they do. I love what we do. And I want to pass it on to those people. If I could give somebody one thing that will help them, it's the folks that want to run the other way or bury their head in the sand and maybe even justify it in their own mind, that blame others for it, and I've seen that, and they find lots of ways to hide out. Don't do it. Don't do it. Take a look at what needs to be done and face it and move through it, and you won't have any regrets.
You've been listening to The Survivor's Guide to Life on KPCA Petaluma 103.3 FM. We'll be back after a short break. Welcome back to The Survivor's Guide to Life. I'm your host, Jenny Stevenson. Peter, we have one more segment left. And again, this has just flown by. And I want to ask you about something that we haven't really talked about yet as regarding hope. Mm-hmm. And that is spirituality.
I knew you were going to bring that. Absolutely.
And I'm not talking, as you always say, I'm not talking religion.
It may be, but that's not what we're
But
talking.
not specifically. Just before our break, you mentioned the loving care that people give that becomes selfless.
Yeah.
And that it's in the Bible. And I know you're a man of faith, and so how has your spirituality played its part in your being hopeful?
Well, I don't want people to think that I was always such an enriched spiritual, just
a higher being,
higher
possibly?
being, because that's not the way it worked for me. And most of the people that are my friends come from a much different side of life too. We all come from the other side of the tracks, and so none of us have had it come easily. But one of the things about dealing with traumatic experiences, you realize in the midst of it that there's a power that goes so far beyond ours, and is in control, and will determine in those seconds whether a person is going to live or die, or what's going to happen, and we have no control over it. We can deal with the needs at the moment, whatever the crisis is, or whatever difficulties there are. But we don't have the power, and you can't deny that there is some kind of spiritual determinant that is so much higher and more powerful, and it's out of our hands. I've had that experience more than once in my life. I do believe in God, and yes, I am a spiritual man. I wouldn't say that, I look at religiosity in a ritualized way at times, and I was raised with that kind of ritualized religiosity. I'm not a man of, who does well with hypocrites, people who pretend to be religious but don't have that character and strength. I don't do well with that. But those that are real, I don't care what their religious persuasion. Frankly, I respect their spiritual strength and their relationship with God. And I'm not just when they talk it, but what do they do with it? How are they making the world a better place? That's what I look for. So yes, I am a spiritual man. In fact, I know that a lot of my strength is so far beyond my own. And there's a verse in the Bible, and it says, God comes into his own in our weakness. His strength comes into its own in our weakness. And there is no question about it from my life experience that it's true. Being a strong guy, and a guy that really can hold up a lot and be a leader for most of his life, I can assure you I'm so far beyond my own limitations, and yet the resilience, the strength goes on. So there is a higher power in my life and in life in general. Not everybody embraces that. I do. But I was a very cynical, tough one to convince, and I had to be brought to my knees by life experiences more than once. But after a while, there was no doubt in my mind that I wasn't in charge, and I might have had the best laid out, well-developed plans for things, and it didn't turn out that way, because God had another plan. And the message to me was very clear, that I am to serve his plan and seek his plan and will for life, and to serve that, and to serve my fellow man. That's really what I go by. And I want to be there where the need is. I also want to have a heart for people there. And the Bible also says, how can we possibly be there for others who are struggling if we don't struggle? How can we be there? And then the Bible talks about it in terms of sinfulness. How are we going to help people through their sinfulness if we don't have to deal with our own? I believe that. I don't come across as some perfect being. I don't deny my sinful nature and my difficult nature. It's not always so good. In fact, it's probably worse than a lot of people and a lot more dangerous. And yet, that's not the road that I've been on. That's not the path that I'm on. So I look at all that and I go, okay, there's been another purpose in my life, and I'm here to fulfill that purpose. And until God calls me home, and that means going when my end of my life is over, and I'm going to be with him in heaven, I'm here to serve. I'm here to help others that are suffering and in pain and struggling, and to share my own experiences and to use that to give them strength and encouragement and hope. Not by just words, but by example and by empathy. And yes, I am. I want to give them some of my strength too, absolutely. And they can look at me and think, now there's a guy that should have been defeated an awful lot of times from what he goes through. He suffered a whole lot more than a lot of people, and yet here he is. I think that is a testimonial to the spiritual side of life too. And I never want to dismiss that in any way. And I embrace it personally. And I encourage other people to do that too, whatever the religiosity is.
I know I've seen in working with you, when people come to us, for the trauma recovery work that we do, eventually get around to kind of exploring where people are with their spirituality. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people are surprised to recognize that trauma actually starts to bring up questions around spirituality. There is a real strong connection between the experience of trauma and the search or the journey or the questions about spirituality that come up for people.
Absolutely. And they're always surprised to see that we're not going to proselytize. I have my own spirituality. I've had people get mad at me because it accused me of being a traitor, because I have a walk in life that isn't. I was raised as a pretty, what they call an observant Jew, and I'm a Christian today, and I've been for a long time. And I've been cursed, I've been called a traitor, and yet I'm not going to sit there and attack them for where they are. They may attack me, but what I am interested in is what happened to them that made them so bitter and so cynical and angry. It usually doesn't have anything to do with me. I know that. So it's a very sensitive issue, and I know that I'm not here to proselytize. I'm here to encourage people to find their spiritual path and to embrace that and to heal whatever has been damaged and wounded. So it's a very important part of engaging with life. I've seen plenty of people who claim to be religious and they don't engage. They run the other way. And they'll hide behind religiosity. To me, they're hypocrites. They may look good in temple or in church on Saturdays or Sundays, but honestly, that to me is not real spiritual, a spiritual path with integrity. I know I've seen plenty of people like that. I don't have very much respect for that. And many of them would regard me as their enemy. So, I mean, I know that. So there's, these are important issues too. Believe me, they're big issues.
Yeah.
And we're not here to proselytize now either. It's just, this is what I've found that helps me.
The other thing that's coming to mind for me too are some of the veterans that we've worked with have come back from their deployments with what kind of phrase framed for it has been moral injury.
Yes.
And it is an experience that they have had. Maybe they went over to serve with a faith
Mm-hmm.
in a higher power in God. And what they saw, what they experienced, what they themselves did is so devastating that it makes them question what they have
We've
believed.
actually seen it both ways. But yes, we have seen them. I have a very good friend, Colonel David Rabb, and he's an expert on moral injury. He got his thing. He did 4 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. He went back when he didn't have to oversee and keep his men safe. It's great, man. I loved it. Moral injury, or we would call it impoverishment of the soul, bankruptcy of the soul, happens. And in war, you see the most horrific, evil things going on. And people do evil things. So we know that happens. We've seen people turn their back on all faith and blame God and go, if there's a God, how could he let any of this, how could he let this kind of thing happen? That kind of question, no, that comes up. I've had that in my mind at times in my life. But I've also seen other people who had no faith, no spiritual awareness at all. And they come out just the opposite. And they go, I've seen things, and they've been through it, and they know there's a greater, higher power in life that brought them back safely, that brought good out of such horror and nightmarish things. So we've seen it both ways. I have friends that are chaplains. I have friends that are doing some very important things today as veterans. Now, I'll say, not everybody's like that. We're talking about different kinds of things. I've seen the hypocrites too, where they profess religiosity of all kinds and judge and condemn others, which I don't see having anything to do with God whatsoever. And they claim it's based on their spirituality and their religiosity. And I would beg to differ with them completely, because if you're really a spiritual person, you're not here to condemn, you're not here to judge and put people down for having different beliefs, but instead to show a certain understanding and compassion and acceptance and come alongside them as a fellow human being. That to me is more important. That's more God-like than the other. And the other people could be the most religious people in the world. They don't like me usually, and they can be whatever they want. But these are important things to me, and it's one thing that through going through a lot of trauma is it strips you to a place where you gotta find your integrity. You've gotta find your character and strength. Now, I know not all people do, but it's there. And when you're stripped, you come to face with yourself and who you really are. And I think that can be the beginning of discovery. And that's a very important time of development and growth and I believe in that. Yeah.
All right. We are coming to the close. We have just a few more seconds before I let everyone know how to get in touch with us.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything you'd like to add, just a final closing?
Yeah, I thank people for listening. I hope we're helping people where they need to be helped. I hope they don't hear me as a proselytizer, because that's not what I am. I'm sharing what worked for me and where I am. And I'm no totally evolved human being. On the contrary.
You're evolving.
I'm evolving and being broken and all the time. And I feel just like anybody else does. So I don't want to ever feel that you're seeing me sit on a higher throne than anybody else, because it isn't true, and I don't want to be there. Never. I don't want to sit behind a pulpit.
No, I'm with you on that. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. And we are going to continue next episode, on this essential, really important topic of hope. Thank you. The Survivor's Guide to Life is made possible through a grant from Sonoma Coast Trauma Treatment, a 501c3 public charity that relies entirely on donations from people like you. If our podcast and the information we provided benefited you today, I think it may have, or someone you care about, please think about supporting us by giving to Sonoma Coast Trauma Treatment, sctraumatreatment.org, and there's a tool on our website to make a donation. Please also like us on our Facebook page or follow us on Instagram, The Survivor's Guide to Life. If you have a question for Dr. Bernstein or myself, our phone number is 707-781-3335. Thank you so much for listening, and please join us again next time.
Thank you.